Quidditch is a sport of two teams of 7 players each mounted on broomsticks played on a hockey rink-sized pitch. The pitch is rectangular with rounded corners 55 meters by 33 meters with 3 hoops of varying heights at either end. Having been created in 2005, the sport is quite young, but it is played around the world and actively growing. The ultimate goal is to have more points than the other team by the time the snitch, a tennis ball inside a long sock hanging from the shorts of an impartial official dressed in yellow, is caught. Rules of the sport are governed by the International Quidditch Association, or the IQA, and events are sanctioned by either the IQA or the nation's governing body. To score points, chasers or keepers must get the quaffle, a slightly deflated volleyball, into one of 3 of the opposing hoops, which scores the team 10 points. To impede the quaffle from advancing down the pitch, chasers and keepers are able to tackle opposing chasers and keepers at the same time as beaters, using the bludgers to take out opposing players. Once a player is hit by an opposing bludger, the player must dismount the broom, drop any ball being held, and return to and touch the hoops before being allowed back into play. The game is ended once the snitch is caught by one of the seekers, awarding the team 30 points. Therefore you can lose 220 to 0. A team consists of minimum 7 players, of which 6 are always on the pitch, those being the 3 chasers, 1 keeper, and 2 beaters. Besides the seeker who is off pitch, the 6 players are required to abide by the gender rule, which states that a team may have a maximum of 4 players who identifies the same gender, excluding the seeker, making Quidditch one of the few sports that not only offers a co-ed environment but an open community to those who do not identify with the gender binary. Matches or games often run about 30 to 40 minutes but tend to be subject to varying lengths of time due to the unpredictable nature of the snitch catch. If the score at the end of the match, including the 30-point snitch catch, is tied, the game moves to overtime, where the snitch is constrained to the pitch's dimensions and the game ends after 5 minutes or when the snitch is legally caught. History. Quidditch has its roots in the fictional Harry Potter sport of the same name. To denote the difference, the fictional sport uses the capitalized Quidditch, whereas the sport played as per the IQA rules uses the uncapitalized Quidditch. The sport was created in 2005 at Middlebury College in Middlebury, Vermont, by Zonderman Shell and Alex Benepe, who later became the first commissioner of Quidditch. It has grown into its own separate and distinct sport after 9 publications of rulebooks. After beginning in 2005, the sport grew to the point where, in 2007, the first IQA World Cup took place, with Middlebury taking the place of top team. Since then, yearly until 2014, there was a World Cup within the United States, where collegiate and community teams would compete to be the best team, while Canada often sent several Ontario and Quebec teams, and Australia and France each sent 1 team once. The World Cup in its state never saw true international competition. In 2012, the IQA hosted the Summer Games, where 5 nations hosted national teams. 2 years later, on July 19, 2014, the IQA hosted the Global Games in Burnaby, BC, Canada, where national teams came together to compete, with the states defeating Australia for the gold medal. Since beginning at Middlebury College, the sport has its roots in the United States, but it soon grew internationally, arriving in Canada through McGill University and Carleton University in 2009. It began to take shape around the world with teams beginning in Australia, the UK, and France. It soon spread across Europe and the Americas, arriving in Italy, Spain, Belgium, the Netherlands, Mexico, Argentina, and Brazil. There are now active teams in Malaysia, China, South Africa, Uganda, the Philippines, and Vietnam. Play. 3 circular goals are placed on either side of the pitch. The goals are often circular tubes on top of PVC pipes. All players are required to carry a broom between their legs at all times. Otherwise they are considered off the brooms and must touch the team's hoops to rejoin play. Volleyballs are used as the quaffle, and dodgeballs serve as the bludgers. The snitch is a tennis ball contained in a sock tucked in the waistband of the snitch runner, affiliated with neither team and considered both a match official and a ball in play. The snitch runner is dressed in gold or yellow. A game begins with the quaffle and bludgers placed in the center of the field and all players behind the starting line. The head referee calls brooms up to begin the game. As of 2014, with the release of the 8th edition of the USQ rulebook, the rules of snitching worldwide have changed slightly. Rulebook 8 contains the deletion of off-pitch seeking, where now the snitch is restricted to only the playing field. The snitch is released after 17 minutes of game time, while the seekers are released after 18 minutes. Earlier rulebooks stipulated that as the match began, players would line up near their hoops with their eyes closed until the release of the snitch, who then had the complete liberty to run about a predetermined play area. When played on a university or college campus, the range is often the entire campus. The seekers search for the runner around the play area. If they fail to catch them, they return to the field after a preset amount of time. The match ends when one of the seekers catches the snitch, grabbing the tennis ball in the sock and maintaining possession for a minimum of 3 seconds. Catching the snitch awards a team 30 points, while each goal scored is worth 10 points. The team with the most points wins. Positions in Quidditch. Chasers are responsible for passing the quaffle and scoring points by throwing the quaffle through one of the opponent's goals for 10 points. When a bludger hits a chaser in possession of the quaffle, they must drop the quaffle, remove the broom from between the legs, and touch their own hoops to rejoin play. Chasers not in possession of the quaffle must perform the same knockout procedure when hit by a bludger, but do not have a bolted drop. Chasers may enter into physical contact with opposing chasers or keepers. There are 3 chasers on the field for each team, identified by a white headband. Keepers can be likened to goalies in other sports, and must try to block attempts to score by the opposing team's chasers. The keeper is invulnerable to bludgers, as well as having indisputable possession of the quaffle when within the team's keeper zone, an area around the team's hoops. Once outside of the keeper zone, the keeper may serve as a 4th chaser. Keepers may enter into physical contact with opposing keepers or chasers. There is 1 keeper on the field for each team, identified by a green headband. Beaters attempt to hit the opposing team's players with bludgers and attempt to block the bludgers from hitting the team's players. Beaters are subject to the same knockout procedure as chasers or keepers when hit with a bludger, but unlike chasers and keepers, they may attempt to catch a bludger thrown at them. If they succeed in catching a bludger, they are not knocked out, and a beater who threw the bludger may remain in play, as there are 3 bludgers for the 4 beaters on the pitch. The 4th bludgerless beater puts pressure on the team in control of both bludgers. Beaters may enter into physical contact only with other beaters. 2 beaters on a team may be in play at a time, identified by black headbands. Seekers attempt to catch the snitch. They may not contact the snitch, but are permitted to contact the other seeker. Seekers are released after 18 minutes of game time. There is 1 seeker on the field for each team, identified by a gold or yellow headband. Equipment. The game is played with 6 standing hoops, 3 on each side of an elliptical pitch. Each player must hold a broomstick between the legs. There are 3 different types of balls in play, and 5 in total: the quaffle, 3 bludgers, and the snitch. Broomstick. Probably the most iconic piece of equipment for Quidditch. The broomstick serves the purpose of being a handicap, such as one-handed dribbling in basketball or using only your feet in association football. The player must stay mounted on the broomstick for every moment of play unless they have been hit with a bludger, in which case the player needs to dismount from the broom and return to the hoops. To be mounted on the broomstick means that the player must hold the broom between the legs and not have it fully on the ground. It can be supported by the thighs or hands equally, just as long as it is not attached to the person nor fully resting on the ground. Because of it being a handicap, sometimes players do not play with the brooms. Players ride a variety of objects considered to be brooms depending on level of seriousness. Many teams tend to play on PVC pipes of about a meter in length. These are usually made, but can also be purchased from Quidditch suppliers such as Peterson's or Blue Hawk. Less serious players or players who enjoy the whimsy of the sport often use Alavin's shadow chasers, which are wooden and have a tail to resemble brooms described in the Harry Potter books and movies. Oftentimes, newly formed teams tell players to BYOB, which results in players coming on an assortment of camp-and or dangerous brooms, from Swiffers to 2x4 pieces of wood, though this practice is discouraged beyond the first few practices. Hoops. 3 hoops are placed on either side of the pitch of differing heights. Place 2 broomsticks apart. Chasers and keepers can score by throwing the quaffle through any one of the hoops, from either front or back, gaining 10 points for the team per score. Any player experiencing a knockout effect from either dismounting the broomstick or getting hit with a bludger must touch with any part of their body, excluding the broom, any one of the hoops before returning to play. Quaffle. The quaffle is a slightly deflated regulation volleyball that can only be manipulated by chasers or keepers. Used for scoring, it may pass through any hoop from either side, regardless of which team caused the quaffle to pass through the hoop, as long as it is in play. A goal is scored against the team whose hoop was scored upon, which is counted to be 10 points. Bludgers. The bludger is a slightly deflated dodgeball that can only be manipulated by beaters. At any given time there are 4 beaters in play, but only 3 bludgers. The bludgers are used to hit any other player on the field. Upon being hit by a bludger previously in the possession of an opposing beater, the player suffers the knockout effect. This means they must dismount the broom, drop any ball that they may have been carrying, and touch the team's hoops before resuming play. It's worth noting that there is no friendly fire, meaning that bludgers thrown by beaters cannot affect any of the teammates. Snitch. The snitch is a tennis ball placed at the bottom of a yellow long sock which is attached to the back of the snitch runner's shorts as if it were a tail. The snitch runner may do everything in their power to protect the snitch from being caught by seekers. Only seekers may make advances towards the snitch or the snitch runner, and no forceful contact with the snitch runner is allowed. After a certain amount of the time without having been caught, the snitch runner is relegated to the first of 2 handicaps, playing with one arm held behind the back. The second handicap is applied if the snitch is still not caught after a secondary amount of time where the snitch runner must hold both hands behind the back. The game ends when the snitch is grabbed by a seeker, awarding that seeker's team 30 points. As of the release of the rule book 8, the snitch is relegated to playing only on the field in the same fashion of the other players. Previously, snitch runners left the pitch to be pursued by seekers returning to the field after a predetermined amount of time. The term off-pitch seeking is applied to the pre-rule book 8 scenario. Many countries play using the 8th edition's rules, all the while keeping the 7th edition's off-pitch seeking rules. The IQA has released 9 iterations of the rule book, each building upon the last. Currently, Rule Book 8 is available in French, and there are translations until Rule Book 5 in Italian, Mandarin, and Spanish. Playing. Each match begins with 6 of the starting players along the starting line within their keeper zone with brooms on the ground and the 4 balls lined in the center of the pitch. The head referee then calls brooms up, at which players run to gain possession of the balls. After brooms up is called, the seekers must not interfere with other positions, and wait near the pitch until the end of the seeker floor, usually 18 minutes. The snitch goes on the field at 17 minutes, and the seekers are released at 18 minutes. Play runs rapidly, with quick change of hands of the quaffle, because every goal scored against a team gives that team the ball. Once a point is scored, the quaffle must be given to the other team's keeper, and almost immediately returns to the offensive, with the chasers returning to the keeper zone, a proper side of the pitch. Beaters are not bound to return to the side of the pitch nor exit the opposing team's keeper zone at any point. Games can last any length of time longer than 18 minutes, depending on the skill and endurance of the seekers and snitch. Many tournaments introduce snitch handicaps, such as asking the snitch to use only one hand, no hands, or remain on the center line, to ensure games fit within reasonable time slots. The game is won only after the snitch has been caught cleanly, and the team that caught the snitch is awarded 30 points. The winner is determined not by the snitch catch but by the number of points earned. Thus it is not unknown for teams that are losing by a wide margin to try delaying a snitch catch so that they can narrow the opponent's lead, along with the reverse, with the winning team trying to extend the lead. Fouls and illegal plays. A player can commit numerous fouls and illegal plays. Varying degrees of illegality will earn a player anything from a warning to a red card and permanent expulsion from that match. Contact rules are fairly straightforward and are similar to other contact sports. Tackles are legal between the knees and shoulders. Players can only tackle other players of the same position if they have the ball. Pushes are allowed if the arm is held straight. It is illegal to push if the arm is bent and then extended when pushing another player. Contact initiated from behind is illegal, but it is considered clean if a player tackling another runs into the tackle and then turns backwards. After several various types of illegal play, the head ref will blow the whistle twice to indicate stoppage of play, in which every player must drop in place the broom on any ball they were holding. Most fouls result in a yellow card being given. With a yellow card, the player awarded the card goes to the penalty box for 1 minute, or until their team is scored upon. Players may not sub from the penalty box. However, if a keeper is awarded a penalty, they must trade headbands with a chaser, as a team must have a keeper on the pitch at all times. When a red card is given, the player who committed the foul must sub off for somebody else on the team. The player who received the red card must leave the pitch. The replacement then has 2 minutes in the penalty box, and is not allowed to leave the penalty box for those 2 minutes even if his or her team is scored upon. A red card can either be given outright or can be the result of 2 yellow cards in a game. The snitch, however, only has a few explicit restrictions such as climbing trees and buildings. However, many snitch rules may soon become void, as some leagues are removing off-pitch seeking from their official gameplay. Pitch. The Quidditch pitch is marked with lines or a series of cones, but it is not binding to players, meaning players can continue play outside the boundaries, but within the spectator zone. Balls are not allowed to be kicked off the pitch under penalty, nor is play allowed in the spectator zones. Players are asked to return to the pitch when play continues out of bounds. On the edge of the pitch are two penalty boxes, where players who have committed fouls that warrant yellow cards are sent for 1 minute. Officials. Each official game requires having several referees present as well as an official snitch. The referees of the head ref, whose job is to control the field and administer fouls and yellow or red cards to offending players. Assistant refs, who assist the head referee in watching for illegal plays. The snitch ref, who follows the snitch once they enter the field and determine whether or not the catch was clean. And the goal refs, whose job is to determine whether the quaffle went through the hoop. Assistant refs are oftentimes called bludger or beater refs, and their job is to call beat when the beat was clean, to help determine whether a goal was scored based on the beat, and assist with making calls concerning illegal action or give verbal warnings to players. Assistant referees are also able to communicate to the head ref for a stoppage of play if witness to an action that would result in a yellow card. Snitch refs, whilst the snitch is off-field, act as an additional bludger ref. The snitch runner, being a neutral player and assistant referee, may help the referees to determine whether or not the catch was clean. The release of Rule Book 8 coincided partially with the reformation of the IQA. As USQ released the rule book, the IQA chose to adopt the 8th iteration as the de facto international standard, where the preceding rule book will be released under the guise of the IQA. The changes from the Rule Book 7 to Rule Book 8 were minimal except in two areas: blue cards and snitching. A technical foul results in a blue card on a player where that player must substitute with another player of the same position. The substitution does not, however, result in a power play for the other team, and play is not stopped when this card is rendered. A play may accrue an unlimited amount of technical fouls during a match. Snitching also changed in Rule Book 8, resulting in the deletion of off-pitch seeking, where before, the snitch would be released before each match by running off the pitch during a set amount of time. Now the snitch is released to the field, limited to the playing area, at 17 minutes. Many NGBs choose to continue playing under Rule Book 7 rules. International Quidditch Association. The International Quidditch Association serves as the central governing body for Quidditch worldwide and helps to coordinate with national associations around the world through the IQA Congress. Previously, the IQA held a World Cup for qualifying members of the association at the end of every season, the first being held in 2007, ending in 2014 with its restructuring. Now, the only tournament the IQA oversees is the International Global Games. National governing bodies. Each nation in which Quidditch is played has or is in the process of developing a national organization. The job of the national organization is to organize Quidditch within the country, create membership policies for teams, organize referees, snitches, and coaches, and be the bridge between the nation's teams and the IQA. Currently, the active national associations are Asociación Mexicana de Quidditch, Asociazione Italiana Quidditch, Australian Quidditch Association, Associação Brasileira de Quadribol, Association Argentina de Quidditch, Fédération du Quidditch Français, Deutsche Quidditch-Bund, Norges Rumpeldunk-Verband, Quidditch Benelux, Belgian Quidditch Federation, Muggle Quidditch Netherlands, Quidditch Canada, Quidditch Quidditch Association in Turkey, US Quidditch, Asociación Quidditch España, Asociación de Quidditch de Catalunya, Quidditch Korea.